The back door creaked open at 2 a.m., and I knew my marriage was over before I even saw her face. 20 years of Special Forces training doesn't just disappear when you hang up your uniform, and the sound of guilt trying to sneak through my own house hit my ears like a gunshot in a library. Sarah thought I was asleep. Hell, maybe she hoped I was dead. I lay there in our king-sized bed, the one we'd bought during happier times when we still pretended to love each other, listening to her fumble with her keys like some teenager sneaking past curfew. The irony wasn't lost on me. A 43-year-old attorney acting like a kid with her hand caught in the cookie jar. Tom? Her voice drifted up the stairs, sugar sweet and fake as artificial vanilla. You awake, honey? Honey, right. The same woman who'd called me a disappointing middle-aged mechanic at her law firm's Christmas party was now calling me honey. I kept my breathing steady, eyes closed, playing the role of the oblivious husband she clearly thought I was. Sarah Martinez. She'd kept her maiden name for professional reasons, she said. Was many things. Smart, ambitious, ruthless in the courtroom. But sneaky? That was new. Or maybe I'd just been too stupid to notice. The floorboards in our hallway groaned under her feet. She was trying to be quiet, but our house was built in 1987, and every board had something to say about late-night visitors. I heard her pause outside our bedroom door, probably checking to see if I was really asleep. I was Tom Bradley, mechanical engineer, former Army sergeant, and apparently the world's biggest fool. For the past 6 months, I'd watched my wife transform from the woman I'd married into someone I barely recognized. Late nights at the office became the norm. Weekend case preparations that required her to be unreachable for hours. New clothes, expensive perfume, and a sudden interest in working out. Noff, all the classic signs, and I'd ignored every damn one. But tonight was different. Tonight, I'd seen her car at the Marina Bay Hotel, parked next to a police cruiser I recognized. Deputy Sheriff Mike Collins, the town's golden boy, with his perfect smile and his perfect uniform and his perfectly obvious intentions toward my wife. I'd driven past without stopping, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight I thought I might break it. Instead of confronting them, I'd come home and waited. Sometimes the best strategy is patience, even when your world is falling apart. Sarah finally entered our bedroom, moving like a cat burglar in her own house. I felt the mattress dip as she sat down to remove her shoes, expensive heels I'd never seen before. The bathroom light clicked on, and I heard water running, washing off the evidence, no doubt. When she finally slipped into bed beside me, I caught the scent of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. Something expensive and masculine, the kind of fragrance a cop might wear to impress a married lawyer. Tom? She whispered again. I mumbled something incoherent, the way people do when they're half asleep. She seemed satisfied and settled in beside me, probably relieved that her husband was too dense to figure out what she'd been doing. If only she knew that her dense husband had been trained to gather intelligence in some of the most dangerous places on earth. Cheating wives weren't exactly advanced warfare, but the principles were the same. Observe, analyze, plan, execute. I lay there until her breathing became steady and deep, then carefully slipped out of bed. My workshop was in the basement, and I had some thinking to do. The basement had become my sanctuary over the years. Down here, surrounded by my tools and half-finished projects, I could think clearly. The overhead fluorescent light buzzed to life, illuminating my workbench and the various mechanical components I'd been tinkering with. I opened my laptop and started typing. If Sarah wanted to play games, she was about to learn that her husband wasn't the pushover she thought he was. First, I needed information. Real information, not just suspicions and cologne-scented evidence. I pulled up our cell phone account online. One of the benefits of being the one who actually paid the bills. Sarah's call logs told an interesting story. Dozens of calls to Deputy Collins over the past 3 months, many of them lasting over an hour. Then there were the text messages. Our family plan included message backups, something Sarah had probably forgotten about. I scrolled through weeks of increasingly intimate exchanges between my wife and her new boyfriend. Can't wait to see you tonight. Tom's working late again. The way you looked in that uniform today. I couldn't concentrate on my closing arguments. He suspects nothing. Poor guy thinks I'm just stressed about work. Poor guy. That stung more than the rest of it combined. Not just the betrayal, but the casual dismissal. The way she talked about me like I was some kind of simpleton who couldn't tie his own shoes without help. I kept reading, my anger building with each message. They'd been planning this for months, carefully coordinating their schedules, choosing hotels in neighboring towns, even discussing what they'd do if I ever found out. He's not the type to make a scene, Sarah had written. He'll probably just file for divorce quietly and disappear. Disappear. Right. The messages got worse from there. They weren't just having an affair, they were actively planning a future together. Collins was apparently getting divorced from his own wife, and they'd discussed Sarah doing the same. The only question was timing and how to minimize the financial impact on Sarah's career. I need to be careful about the optics, she'd written. Can't look like the cheating wife if I want to make partner. So she was going to spin this as my fault somehow. Paint me as the neglectful husband who drove her into another man's arms. Classic lawyer move. Control the narrative, win the case. But Sarah had made one critical error in her planning. She'd underestimated her opponent. I spent the next 2 hours reading through everything, taking screenshots, and organizing the evidence. By the time I was done, I had a complete picture of their relationship, including dates, locations, and even some particularly incriminating photos they'd sent each other. The smart play would be to take this straight to a divorce attorney. With this kind of evidence, I could probably get a favorable settlement and be done with the whole mess. But as I sat there in my basement workshop, surrounded by the tools of my trade, I realized I didn't want smart. I wanted justice. Sarah thought she was dealing with a predictable, boring husband who would roll over and accept whatever scraps she threw his way. Collins probably figured he was just another cop who could charm his way out of any consequences. They were both about to learn otherwise. The next morning, Sarah performed her usual routine with Oscar-worthy dedication. Coffee, toast, a quick kiss on my cheek before heading off to another long day at the office. She even asked about my plans, feigning interest in my mundane engineering life. Just the usual, I told her, buttering my toast with deliberate calm. Working on the Henderson project. Might grab drinks with the guys after work. That sounds nice, honey. You should get out more. Honey again. The word was starting to make my skin crawl. After she left, I called in sick to work, something I'd done maybe 3 times in 15 years. My supervisor, Dave Morrison, was understanding as always. Take care of yourself, Tom. That flu's been going around. If only he knew what kind of sickness I was actually dealing with. My first stop was downtown, to the office of Patricia Williams, the best private investigator in the county. Patricia was a former police detective who'd gone private after getting fed up with department politics. She was expensive, thorough, and discreet, exactly what I needed. Her office was in one of those converted warehouse buildings that tried too hard to look modern. All exposed brick and industrial lighting, the kind of place that charged extra for the authentic atmosphere. Patricia herself was nothing like what I'd expected. Mid-50s, gray hair pulled back in a professional bun, wearing a business suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. She looked more like a bank president than a private detective. "Mr. Bradley," she said, gesturing to a leather chair across from her desk. "What can I do for you?" I handed her a folder containing printouts of the most damning text messages and call logs. "I need you to document my wife's affair. Dates, locations, witnesses, everything that would hold up in court." She reviewed the materials without changing expression, the way someone might read a grocery list. "This is pretty comprehensive evidence already. What exactly are you looking for that you don't already have? I want to know everything. How long it's been going on, where they meet, who else knows about it. I want a complete picture. That's going to be expensive. Money's not an issue." That wasn't entirely true, but I had some savings Sarah didn't know about. Call it insurance, or maybe just the paranoia of an ex-soldier who'd learned that everything could go sideways without warning. Patricia quoted me a daily rate that made me wince, but I agreed. "How long do you think you'll need?" "Give me a week, maybe 2 if they're being particularly careful." "They're not." She raised an eyebrow at that, and I explained about the predictable patterns I'd already identified. Same hotels, same times, same routes. For a cop and a lawyer, they were surprisingly sloppy about operational security. "Amateurs," Patricia said with something that might have been amusement. "The confident ones are always the easiest to catch." From Patricia's office, I drove across town to visit someone I hadn't seen in years, my old Army buddy Jake Morrison. Jake owned a boxing gym in the industrial district, the kind of place where serious fighters trained and weekend warriors came to pretend they were tough. The gym smelled like sweat, leather, and determination. The sound of gloves hitting heavy bags echoed through the space like a mechanical heartbeat. Jake was in the ring with a young fighter, calling out combinations and corrections. "Keep your guard up, Tommy. You drop your left hand again, and I'm going to let Rodriguez here knock your block off." He spotted me through the ropes and grinned. "Tom Bradley, what brings you to my house of pain?" "Need to talk, Jake. Got a few minutes?" He finished with his student and climbed out of the ring, wiping his hands on a towel. Jake looked exactly like what he was, a former infantry sergeant who'd stayed in shape and wasn't afraid of hard work. Gray at the temples now, but still built like a brick wall. You look like hell, brother. What's going on? I gave him the abbreviated version. Cheating wife, corrupt cop, need to blow off some steam before I did something stupid. Jake listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You want my advice? He finally said. That's why I'm here. Forget the revenge fantasy. Take your evidence, get a good lawyer, and divorce her ass. Take half of everything and start over somewhere else. That's the smart play, I agreed. But you're not going to do it. Probably not. Jake sighed and looked around his gym. You remember what we used to say in Afghanistan about the difference between smart and right? Smart keeps you alive. Right keeps you human. Exactly, and sometimes you have to choose. He grabbed a pair of boxing gloves from a nearby rack. You still remember how to throw a punch? For the next hour, Jake put me through a workout that reminded me why I'd stopped boxing in the first place. My body remembered the movements, but 15 years of desk work had made me soft. By the time we finished, I was exhausted, soaked in sweat, and feeling more like myself than I had in months. Feel better? Jake asked as we sat on a bench, sharing a bottle of water. Yeah, actually, I do. Good, because you're going to need to be in shape for whatever comes next. He gave me a serious look. I meant what I said about the smart play, Tom. But if you're determined to go down this road, at least do it right. What do you mean? I mean, don't half-ass it. If you're going to war with these people, then go to war. But do it smart, do it legal, and make sure you win. That evening, I was back in my basement workshop when Sarah came home. She called down the stairs, her voice bright and cheerful. Tom, how was your day? Fine, I called back. Just working on a project. Don't stay up too late. You know how cranky you get when you don't sleep enough. Oh, cranky, right. If she only knew what cranky really looked like. I heard her moving around upstairs, probably getting ready for another late night at the office. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, she appeared at the top of the basement stairs. I have to go back to the office for a few hours. Big case, you know how it is. Sure thing, drive safe. Love you, she said, the words as empty as a campaign promise. Love you too. After she left, I went upstairs and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. Good stuff, the bottle we'd been saving for special occasions. This seemed special enough. I sat in my living room, in the chair I'd bought when we first moved into this house, and looked around at the life I'd built. Family photos on the mantelpiece, books Sarah and I had read together, souvenirs from vacations when we'd actually enjoyed each other's company. All of it felt like a museum now, artifacts from someone else's life. My phone buzzed with a text message from Patricia Williams. Preliminary surveillance complete. They're at the Marina Bay Hotel, room 237. Same pattern as your intel suggested. We'll have full report by Friday. I finished my bourbon and went back to my workshop. If Sarah and Collins wanted to play games, I was going to make sure I understood all the rules first. Patricia's full report arrived on Friday morning, delivered to my office, in a manila envelope that felt like it weighed 100 pounds. I waited until lunch to read it, locking my office door and telling my secretary I wasn't to be disturbed. The photographs were worse than I'd expected. Not just because of what they showed, but because of how happy Sarah looked. In 20 years of marriage, I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her smile like that. But the real revelation was in Patricia's background research on Deputy Collins. Mike Collins wasn't just cheating on his wife, he was dirty. Patricia had uncovered a pattern of suspicious arrests, evidence that had mysteriously disappeared, and financial records that didn't match his official salary. Subject appears to be involved in protection racket, Patricia had written. Several local businesses show payments to shell company registered in Collins' name. Recommend extreme caution in any direct confrontation. So my wife wasn't just sleeping with another man. She was sleeping with a corrupt cop, who might be dangerous if cornered. The situation had just gotten significantly more complicated. I was still processing this information when my office phone rang. Tom Bradley. Tom, it's Jennifer Walsh. Jennifer was Sarah's best friend and law partner, the kind of woman who collected gossip like some people collect stamps. We'd been friends for years, back when couples' dinners and weekend barbecues were still part of our routine. Hey, Jen, what's up? Are you free for lunch today? I need to talk to you about something. There was something in her voice that made my radar ping. Sure, the usual place? Actually, let's go somewhere more private. How about that little cafe on Elm Street? The one with the outdoor seating? An hour later, I was sitting across from Jennifer at a corner table, watching her fidget with her coffee cup like it might explode. She'd always been direct to the point of bluntness, so this hesitant version of her was unsettling. "Okay, Jen, what's this about?" She took a deep breath. "Tom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Are you and Sarah having problems?" "Why would you ask that?" "Because she's been different lately, distracted, and there are rumors going around the office." "What kind of rumors?" Jennifer looked around the cafe as if checking for eavesdroppers. "People are saying she's been seen with Mike Collins, a lot, in situations that looked intimate." I kept my expression neutral. "Mike Collins, the deputy? You know him? We've met. He seems like a decent guy." Jennifer's eyes narrowed. "Tom, are you seriously going to sit there and pretend you don't know what I'm talking about?" "I don't know what you want me to say, Jen." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I want you to say that you're going to do something about it. Sarah is my friend, but what she's doing is wrong, and if you don't stop it, it's going to destroy both of your careers. Both of our careers. Collins is married to the police chief's daughter. When this comes out, and it will come out, it's going to be a scandal that touches everyone involved, including the law firm." Now we were getting to the real reason for this conversation. Jennifer wasn't concerned about my marriage. She was worried about her professional reputation. "What do you suggest I do?" I asked. "Talk to her. Make her end it before someone gets hurt. And if she won't?" Jennifer's expression hardened. "Then maybe you need to make the decision for her." After lunch, I drove around town for an hour, thinking about what Jennifer had said. Sarah's affair wasn't just personal anymore. It was professional suicide for everyone involved, which meant other people had motives to want it stopped. That gave me an idea. I spent the weekend doing research, using skills I'd learned in the Army to build a comprehensive picture of everyone connected to this mess. Sarah's law firm, Collins Police Department, the various social and professional networks that connected them all. What I found was a web of relationships and dependencies that made the affair even more complicated than I'd realized. Sarah's boss, Martin Pierce, was running for district attorney next year. A scandal involving one of his partners could derail his campaign. Collins's father-in-law, Police Chief Robert Hayes, was already dealing with corruption allegations. His son-in-law's affair would add fuel to that fire. Everyone had something to lose, which meant everyone was a potential ally or enemy, depending on how I played this. On Monday morning, I made a decision that would have surprised my old Army buddies. Instead of attacking, I decided to let my enemies destroy themselves. I started by having lunch with Martin Pierce. Pierce was one of those lawyers who looked like Central Casting had ordered him from a catalog. Silver hair, expensive suit, firm handshake, and the kind of smile that made you want to count your fingers afterward. "Tom, good to see you. How's the engineering business?" "Can't complain. How's the campaign going?" His smile faltered slightly. "Well, you know how these things are. Lots of moving parts, lots of potential complications." "I imagine so. Must be stressful, worrying about what might come out during an election year." Pierce's eyes sharpened. "Is there something specific you wanted to discuss, Tom?" I pulled out my phone and showed him one of Patricia's photographs. Sarah and Collins, in an intimate embrace outside the Marina Bay Hotel. Pierce stared at the image for a long moment, then slowly set down his coffee cup. "When was this taken?" "Last week. There are others." "What do you want?" "Nothing from you, Martin. I just thought you should know what kind of publicity storm might be heading your way." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm informing you. What you do with the information is up to you." I left Pierce sitting at the restaurant, staring at my phone screen like it was a bomb that might go off at any moment. That afternoon, I had a similar conversation with Chief Hayes. Hayes was nothing like Pierce. Where the lawyer was smooth and polished, the police chief was rough around the edges, the kind of cop who'd worked his way up from patrol and never forgotten where he came from. "Mr. Bradley, I understand you wanted to see me about a sensitive matter." We were in his office at the police station, surrounded by commendations and photographs from 30 years of law enforcement. Hayes looked tired, like a man carrying more weight than he could handle. "It's about your son-in-law, Chief." His expression didn't change, but I saw his shoulders tense. "What about Mike?" I showed him the same photograph I'd shown Pierce. Hayes studied it carefully, then handed my phone back without comment. "How long has this been going on?" he asked. "At least 3 months that I can document. Probably longer." Hayes was quiet for a long moment, staring out his office window at the parking lot, where his officers came and went on their daily routines. "My daughter doesn't know," he finally said. "Are you sure about that?" "Oh, she would have told me." He looked back at me. What are you planning to do with this information? I haven't decided yet. But you're considering your options, wouldn't you? Hayes nodded slowly. Yes, I would, and I'd want to make sure I understood all the consequences before I made any moves. What kind of consequences? The kind that affect innocent people. My daughter, for instance. Your wife's career. The reputation of this department. What about my marriage? That's already over, son. The question now is how much collateral damage there's going to be when it falls apart. I left the police station with a new understanding of the situation. This wasn't just about Sarah and Collins anymore. It was about power, politics, and the complex web of relationships that held a small town together. Everyone involved had something to lose, and everyone was looking for a way to minimize their exposure, which meant the real battle wasn't going to be between me and the people who'd betrayed me. It was going to be between all of them, as they turned on each other to save themselves. All I had to do was light the fuse and step back. The call came on a Tuesday evening, while I was in my workshop, putting the finishing touches on what I'd started calling Project Justice in my head. Sarah's voice on the phone was tight with barely controlled anger. Tom, we need to talk, now. I'm kind of busy right now, honey. Can it wait until… No, it can't wait. Come upstairs. We're having this conversation tonight. I found her in the living room, pacing like a caged animal. She'd obviously come straight from work, still in her power suit, hair slightly disheveled, clutching a glass of wine like it was a weapon. Sit down, she said. I think I'll stand. Fine, stand. But you're going to listen to what I have to say. I crossed my arms and waited. After 20 years of marriage, I knew Sarah well enough to recognize when she was building up to something big. The pacing, the wine, the formal tone. She was preparing for battle. I know what you've been doing, she said. What exactly have I been doing? Don't play dumb with me, Tom. The private investigator, the meetings with Martin and Chief Hayes, all of it. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Actually, I'd been counting on her finding out. But I didn't say that. Find out about what? Sarah stopped pacing and turned to face me directly. About your pathetic little revenge scheme. About how you've been running around town trying to destroy my career because you can't handle the fact that I've outgrown this marriage. Outgrown. That's an interesting way to put it. What would you call it, Tom? We haven't been happy in years. We barely talk to each other anymore. We're like roommates who happen to share a mortgage. So you decided to start sleeping with Mike Collins. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a fired gun. Sarah's face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, defiance, before settling on something that looked almost like relief. Yes, she said simply. I did. How long? Does it matter? It matters to me. Sarah took a long sip of wine, gathering her thoughts. 6 months, maybe 7. Why him? Because he makes me feel alive again. Because when I'm with him, I remember what it's like to be excited about something. Because he sees me as more than just a convenient wife who pays half the bills. That stung. Probably because there was some truth to it. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being lovers and become business partners in the enterprise of our marriage. So why are we having this conversation? I asked. Why not just file for divorce and be done with it? Because you're trying to destroy both of our careers out of spite. And I won't let you do that. I haven't done anything. You showed those photographs to Martin and Chief Hayes. You hired a private investigator to follow us around like we're criminals. You're trying to turn this into some kind of public scandal. Maybe because it is a scandal. You're sleeping with a married police officer, Sarah, a corrupt one, from what I hear. Her eyes flashed with anger. Mike isn't corrupt. Really? Then how does he afford that new truck on a deputy's salary? How does he explain the cash payments from local businesses? How does… Stop. Sarah's voice was sharp. I don't know what lies you've been told, but Mike is a good man who's been nothing but honest with me. Has he been honest with his wife? That's different. How is it different? Because his marriage was already over. They've been separated for months. Separated but still living in the same house? Sarah hesitated. It's complicated. I bet it is. We stared at each other across the living room. 20 years of marriage reduced to this moment of mutual recognition. We were enemies now, not spouses. What do you want from me, Tom? I want you to admit what you've done. To me, to yourself, to everyone who's been covering for you. And then what? You get your revenge and we all live happily ever after? Then we figure out how to end this without destroying everyone else in the process. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think you're some kind of white knight, don't you? The wronged husband seeking justice? I think I'm someone who got tired of being lied to. Well, congratulations. You've succeeded in making everything worse for everyone involved. Martin is furious, Chief Hayes is talking about reassigning Mike, and half the town is gossiping about us like we're some kind of soap opera. Good! The word came out harsher than I'd intended, but I didn't take it back. Sarah looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You really want to hurt us, don't you? I want consequences. For 20 years, I've watched you manipulate situations to get what you want without ever paying a price. Well, this time there's going to be a price. And what about your price, Tom? What happens to you when all this is over? That was a good question, and one I'd been avoiding thinking about too carefully. When the dust settled, I'd be a divorced man in his 40s, starting over in a town where everyone knew my business. I'll figure it out, will you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're so focused on destroying us that you haven't thought about what comes next for you. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. We both froze, looking at each other with the same thought. Who knew we were having this conversation? Are you expecting someone? Sarah asked. No. The bell rang again, followed by a heavy knock. I walked to the front door and looked through the peephole. Mike Collins stood on my front porch, still in uniform, his hand resting on his service weapon. It's your boyfriend, I called back to Sarah. Oh, God. I heard her set down her wine glass. Don't answer it. Why not? Isn't it time we all had an honest conversation? I opened the door before Sarah could stop me. Collins looked exactly like what he was, a small-town cop who was used to intimidating people and wasn't sure what to do when intimidation didn't work. Evening, deputy. What can I do for you? I need to talk to you, Bradley, and I need to talk to Sarah. She's right here. Come on in. Collins stepped into my living room, his eyes moving between Sarah and me like he was assessing a crime scene. He was younger than I'd expected, probably mid-30s, with the kind of build that came from regular gym workouts rather than real physical work. Sarah told me about your investigation, he said. Did she? That's interesting. What else did she tell you? She told me you're trying to blackmail us. I looked at Sarah, who was standing by the fireplace looking like she wanted to disappear. Blackmail? That's a serious accusation, deputy. Don't play games with me, Bradley. I know what you're doing, and I'm here to tell you it stops now. Or what? Collins' hand moved closer to his weapon. Or things get complicated for everyone involved. Are you threatening me in my own home, deputy? I'm telling you that there are consequences for interfering with police business. What police business would that be? Your affair with my wife? Collins' face flushed red. Watch your mouth. Or what? You'll arrest me? On what charges? I'll think of something. The threat hung in the air between us, and I realized that Collins was exactly what Patricia's report had suggested, a corrupt cop who was used to solving problems with his badge and his gun. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd threatened me in front of a witness, in my own home, while wearing his uniform. Sarah, I said without taking my eyes off Collins, are you hearing this? Your boyfriend just threatened to frame me for a crime because I found out about your affair. Mike, don't, Sarah said. This isn't helping. He needs to understand the situation, Collins said. I understand it perfectly, I replied. You're a corrupt cop who's sleeping with my wife, and now you're trying to intimidate me into keeping quiet about it. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Should we discuss your side business, deputy? The protection money you collect from local businesses? The evidence that disappears from the property room? Collins took a step toward me, his hand now openly resting on his gun. Shut your mouth. Mike, stop. Sarah moved between us. This isn't the way to handle this. Then what is, Sarah? He's trying to destroy both of us. Maybe because you both deserve it, I said. Collins pushed past Sarah and got in my face. You think you're smart, don't you, Bradley? Ex-military, thinks he knows how the world works. But you don't know anything about this town or the people who really run it. Enlighten me. You keep pushing this, and you're going to find out that some problems solve themselves, permanently. That was the moment everything changed. Collins had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and all three of us knew it. Did you just threaten to kill me, deputy? Collins realized his mistake immediately. His face went pale, and he took a step back. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. We all heard what you meant. I looked at Sarah, who was staring at Collins like she'd never seen him before. This is the man you're throwing away our marriage for, Sarah. A corrupt cop who just threatened to murder your husband. Mike didn't mean. Yes, he did. And now we all know exactly what kind of man he really is. Collins was backing toward the door now, realizing that he'd just made the situation infinitely worse for himself. This conversation isn't over, Bradley. Yes, it is. And deputy? The next time you want to threaten someone, You might want to make sure they're not recording the conversation. I held up my phone, showing the recording app that had been running since Collins arrived. You son of a... Get out of my house, now. Collins looked at Sarah one last time, then stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Sarah and I stood in our living room, listening to his car start and drive away. When the sound faded, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. Tom, I'm sorry. I never wanted. It's too late for sorry, Sarah. Your boyfriend just threatened to kill me, in front of you, while wearing his uniform. He was just angry. He didn't mean it. Do you really believe that? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her replaying the conversation in her head, seeing Collins the way I'd seen him, as a dangerous man who solved problems with violence. What happens now? She asked. Now we find out what kind of person you really are, Sarah, and what kind of man Collins really is. What do you mean? I mean, this recording is going to Chief Hayes tomorrow morning, and then we'll see how loyal your boyfriend is when his career is on the line.